photographic memory.
I can't take notes during this. You can't focus on it. So I guess to start things off, I just wanted to, it's two Genesis questions about yourself as a filmmaker and this film. So when did you sort of decide this was something that you would want to do at some point, and how did that evolve to actually doing it? And, of all the stories to tell, why this one?
Well, I thought she was an intriguing historical figure. I thought that the choice that Edward VIII made to give up the throne for this woman posed a lot of questions in my brain. Like, one was, was the idea of, did he do it for love? Was it the greatest romance of the 20th century? And then the other was trying to understand her character and what she had to offer. And also, as I investigated and did research on her, I realized that, she had been treated very unfairly in the history books, and that she didn't actually turn out to be any of the things that were first presented to me. So then that made me think about the whole idea of the cult of celebrity and our obsession with famous people and how unfairly we usually treat them because we don't allow them to become human beings. We paint them as either black or white, and there is no nuance or subtlety, or, the idea of duality doesn't exist. So all of those things factored into my attraction to the story.
Okay. And, working with Alec,
Kashishin?
Yes, sorry, I was scared to say the last name. So sort of when did you decide that would be a good idea, and what was the creative process to write something together? That's an interesting situation.
Well, we've collaborated on a lot of things over the years, and remained friends over the years. And I had written Filth and Wisdom with Dan Kidan, an English writer who's actually quite funny, and he lent himself really well for that subject matter. But when I got to when I started doing research on the story of the Duke and Duchess, and I decided, at first I thought about writing with Dan again, but then I thought I needed to write with somebody who, like me, Alec had spent a lot of time in England, but he's an American, and I think a lot of times when you're an outsider and you come to a place, I think you see things in a way that someone who's from that place can't see, so you have an interesting and sometimes more objective point of view. And he knew a lot about the subject matter as well, and he was intrigued and interested in the same things that I was, and he's also written a lot of screenplays, and I thought he would be the right person to collaborate with on this project. And
was there any sort of specific challenges that came up in that process? At least a lot of research must have had to go into...
Yeah, we had fun researching it, for sure, and, there's a lot of crazy, eccentric characters that revolve around, Wallis Simpson and Edward VIII, and, all the royals and, the people at Sotheby's, the auction house. Actually, Alec is the person who introduced me, the 1010 character, she really exists.
Oh.
And he introduced me to her, and a lot of the people who work at Sotheby's were friends of his that he introduced me to, and then I met David Redden. The man who plays the auctioneer in the film was really the auctioneer at the auction of the Duke and Duchess's estate. So, we spent a lot of time with people who work at Sotheby's and people who do estate auctions, and we had a lot of fun researching. And 1010 did see the movie, and she was very happy.
And
she liked your wardrobe.
Compared to Filth and Wisdom, this is such a different monster. This is a much bigger film in every possible way. What did you sort of take from the experience making that film into this? What was the sort of main difference?
Making a film is, it's a different film, but it was a good way to learn about filmmaking. To learn about cameras and angles and lenses and film stock, and to work with actors. One film experience can only help the next one. So.
Yeah, and speaking of actors, I loved all the performances, but Andrea is just
phenomenal.
And there must have been so much work going into just learning how to. How was that?
Just getting her accent right.
It's
the way she speaks is so odd. She had this, what they call a transcontinental accent. It's the way movie stars in Hollywood spoke. Americans trying to sound like they're English, kind of a thing. And it happens a lot to Americans that move to England. You start to sort of speak half and half, which is a little bit bizarre. And plus she had a little bit of a southern accent, so getting that balance right, that was a challenge.
Yeah, but I mean, it worked out. She's incredible.
Yeah.
And two other things that really struck me about the film was the precision of everything. It's so beautifully detailed and just beautiful in general. Mm-hmm. And there's so many really beautiful movements with the camera that I feel sort of almost like choreography in a character in itself. You want to talk about, I mean, any of those things that sort of and how they all came together, because it's quite impeccable.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do was I really love camera movement. I love tracking shots. And I love Steadicam. I love the way that the camera, it has a real human feeling to it when it's not locked off, and say the lens is moving, but actual camera is strapped onto a human being who's following another human being, and then that camera becomes an animal or creature, a character in the film as well, and it adds a sense of intimacy to the story and a sense of lyricism, and then there's a kind of dance that occurs. So, and that was really important to me. One of the films that I loved was that I used as a kind of inspiration for the camera work was La Vie en Rose, because I love long takes with no cuts, and there's 2 shots in the movie that were 5 minutes long. I timed them, and they had absolutely no edits, and they were so beautiful the way they moved around the apartment, and she went from one room to the next room to the next room, and there was no edit points, and you never got bored, and I thought it was so beautiful, and I wanted to be able to do that. So I did it.
Yeah, you did. It worked out.
Yes.
One thing that I sort of took from the film, among many other things, and one thing clearly just being sort of telling that story accurately, and because there's so many things that have been like rumors surrounding her that clearly aren't true. Mm-hmm. I found it was sort of a story about empowerment, not necessarily female empowerment, but in this example, yes, and just controlling your own destiny and sort of. Yes. To me, that just as someone who's followed your career, it seems like that's something that's sort of been something you've always been interested in empowering people, empowering women, and controlling your own destiny. I mean, was that sort of
knowing that you're in charge of your destiny and that you don't have to live your life according to other people's plans or expectations of you. And I mean, that's always been a big message in my work. That freedom to express yourself and to be who you are and to not limit yourself, and there, that's a big message in the film, that you're in charge, of your destiny. You don't have to live the life that everyone else expects you to live.
And and speaking of expectations, one thing that I just noticed sort of following over the past couple weeks, I mean, clearly you're new to this profession, and so you do have to prove yourself in a different way.
Of course.
However, sometimes I also feel like, I just wondering, do you think that they're fair? They're reviewing you, or they're reviewing the actual movie? Like, it's just sort of negotiating. It's almost like an unfair disadvantage that you have going into it because you are well known. I mean, how do you treat sort of the way that people respond to your work when you're trying to do something that is different from what you normally do?
Right. Well, I just, know that I did, know that I did the best that I could do. And I pay attention, as I said in the press conference, I pay attention to the reviews where I know people are reviewing my work. And when they're, letting me, the person, the human being, get in the way, then I don't really give it much credence, because at the end of the day, I made the film to be judged as a film, not for people to compare it to me. And so I'm not really sure what your question is. How do I deal with it? Is that
just how do you negotiate?
I understand that that's part of that's going to happen. I mean, I knew that going into this that that people were going to sometimes get their opinion of me mixed up and muddled in with my work. So of course I always appreciate it when people review my film and really stick to the film.
And no, but I appreciate that you put yourself out there with these 2 films and took your career in this direction. I think it's very admirable, and I really appreciated this movie in many, many ways. And women directors in general. This is my question. Yeah. I mean, this is a festival where more than in Hollywood, there's more female directors, say, at a film festival like this or an independent film. Mm-hmm. But it's still, there's 300 films, and there's probably 25 of them, 30 of them directed by women. I mean, why do you think that it's so hard for that to stop, for it to move forward in the way that people have sort of for the past 20 years said it was going to?
mean, why do I think there are not more female directors?
Yeah, and what do you think could happen to change that?
Well, I think like in most fields, there's more men doing everything in every field, don't you think?
Some. I think directors, because there's this sense of power, I think that's why it's been hard to...
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's true. I mean, well, I think directing is perceived as a man's job, and every once in a while I would say to myself, this is a man's job, because, there is no time for grooming. You don't have time. I could only shave my legs once every 2 weeks. Forget about showing up to work, like being able to like think about what I'm wearing or combing my hair, or most of the time I felt like a truck ran me over. So it's not a terribly feminine feeling to show up on the set making, a film. On the other hand, my, being a woman, I think really came in handy when it came to nurturing the actors and, spending time with the girls and dressing them and stuff like that. So, and the boys. I loved dressing everybody. I loved putting the finishing touches on everyone, from, the kerchief in the pocket of Edward's suit and the cufflinks, the jewelry, the hair, the final pin in the hair, everything. I love doing all that stuff. I'm not sure. I don't want to categorize people, but I don't know how many men would be interested in that part of the job.
Some, but certainly
certainly
not all.
A small group, yes.
A small, fabulous group.
Yeah.
Last question? Okay, what's next for you, and how do you want your filmmaking career to evolve?
Well, I'd like to make more films. What's next for me, though, is I'm going to make a record. I've already started writing music, and it's a nice change, because I've been working on this movie for 3 years. So, and, songwriting is a much more visceral exercise than making films. Different. I love them both. But when you're a filmmaker, you really live in your head. And it's nice to play the guitar and, move around.
It's nice that you can switch back and forth and keep things fresh.
I feel very lucky.
Well, thanks so much for speaking with me, and good luck.
My pleasure. Thank you.